Going back a little, ProcSys was the brainchild of three Stanford students, graduates, Dr. Rabindran, Vinay Deshpande and Jawad Hassan. Actually, Harindran was in India. In 1973, they had the vision of the electronic and telecommunications industry growing in India.
In early January 1965, when I came to Cochin, I worked very closely with Damodar Menon, who was the Industries Minister of Kerala. Around that time, Damodar Menon was also speaking to me about his sons. Mr. Ravindran, his elder son in US, and Mr. Harindran, his younger son, who is an engineer.
That time, he just completed a PhD at Stanford, and then what to do next was our question. Actually, he had the invitation to come to Bell Lab. They have kept visa, everything for us. But one day he expressed his thoughts and said, I was given an opportunity to study abroad, and I want to give back something to my country. And then I don't want to remain as a second citizen in US all my life.
I think it was more because Hari and Raviatran's father, he was a freedom fighter, and like they go back with a lot of Indian values and all that. I think those values, like what is today also like what's holding ProcSys together,
I think they were one of the first companies really to show a reverse brain drain. People like Ravindra and Vinay, others, they really could have just stayed on there. And they came back with a serious intent to contribute.
Though the idea was to start the unit at Bangalore, because at that time Bangalore was the hub for telecommunications. But for logistics reasons, because the family, they were from Cochin, the company was incorporated in the year 1973.
Processor Systems India Private Limited, with Damodar Menon as chairman and Ravindran as a director. Damodar Menon had some concern, of course, whether his son is risking his career, well established in US and coming up so beautifully. But Ravindran was very dynamic. He had a lot of initiative in him, creative in him, and he wanted to do something in India worthwhile.
This was a wonderful team, I met Ravi for the first time when he came to India. He was very well built, long hair like a gollywog, but absolutely soft-spoken. When he came to India first time, he brought a calculator. None of us had seen a calculator, forget a computer. So this was displayed to everybody, who came to ProcSys, this is a calculator. Hari was very matter-of-fact person. Hari's kindness, was proverbial. He would not look at himself at all. He would always look at helping others. Vinay was very meticulous. You should see him, he had a Vespa scooter those days, He used to keep a logbook to say how much he has traveled, how much petrol he has filled in. Those days petrol was 2 rupees a litre. And the combination of these three was fantastic. And those days the registrar of companies would visit the company for the meetings. And since the registered office was in Cochin, all the meetings and other things would have to be held at Cochin. So I would go there for technical support. I used to carry all the books and records and go there.
I don't know too many people know about it, but they sold the house in Trivandrum and then gave us that money to start also. It wasn't easy because we both were students. We had no money, nothing at all. And there are lots of well-wishers helped us during our journey.
Our familiarity was only with manufacturing parts, relays and switches and things like that. And suddenly there was somebody who was talking about doing entire CPUs, software which will go with it. And so it was a very exciting times for us.
They set up a pace for others to follow. That's why I really admire them for their vision and determination, because there were so many hurdles. See, banks would not give loans because banks those days were very conservative, Very, very difficult times they had then.
But I must say that both Damodar Menon and Leela Damodar Menon gave him all support which was needed in the early stages when they were growing up.
Now you have to realize that back in 1973, the whole idea of thought to action was actually quite deeply instilled in scientists and engineers, because we were still at that phase thinking seriously about nation building. So there was really a very responsible group of people who were actually trying to make technology relevant for the country. I think what PSI or ProcSys did in those days was pretty remarkable. In some sense, the first real technology innovation startup in Bangalore, an ecosystem which has now, exploded.
Harindran was looking after the administration. Vinay was looking the technical part of it. Until a couple of years later, when Ravindran came back to India, he was the main force behind this, the brains behind the whole thing. They had only one contract those days. It was called Versatile Integrated Modules. That was the company in US for which they were doing some telecommunication monitor work. In fact, that must be the first outsourcing that we speak of so much today, you see. And they started employing engineers. If I remember right, Altaf was the first engineer to have been employed.
How all it happened reminds me about my final year examination. I was asked to meet professor and I saw Vinay sitting over there. He interviewed me and asked me to just come over to Bangalore after finishing my examinations. I didn't even wait for the results. I went to Bangalore and from next day onwards, I joined the duty. It was July 14, 1974. So when I went to the company, I found the cellar. I entered in it and then found that watchman, Mr. Hari Singh, is there and nobody else is there. I was wondering what to do now.
First memory of PSI is actually outside of PSI. I was in my master's, ISc, and my professors over there knew that I was a strange guy who doesn't want to go abroad, doesn't want to do a PhD. So they told me that there is a guy who's coming from a new company and is going to give a talk about the company. So I went to the lecture room, and that was my first view of Ravi with this Sai Baba hair or Einstein hair or whatever it was. And then he had a few ICs on the table in front of him, and we were seeing some microprocessor for the first time.
In the early days of the IT industry, actually the government and the state played an important role. And some of their early projects came from places like the Indian Institute of Science. They were working with electronics for radar systems, electronics for metrology, and all kinds of interesting cutting-edge use of electronics.
The Post and Telegraph Department of India engaged ProcSys to set up a billing system for their STD calls,
It is well known as ATT, Automatic Trunk Ticketing System.
If you take that point to now, again, it shows what era we are coming from. There were only landline phones. So Ravi stepped in saying, well, we will do this. Because the equivalent offer from the imported ones was much more costly than a telephone exchange.
So telephone exchange is a huge jungle of, frames and wires. So we had to design our cards to tap the signals from the exchange and use it for the information we desired.
The first two of these were done in Bangalore, 2 telephone exchanges. And it was not an easy thing at that time to make this work because no one else had done it.
In spite of the bureaucratic hurdles and the red tape those days, they did a very good job out of it.
This was in 1974. And the second important project was for HMT. HMT was using, imported systems at that point of time. And they wanted somebody to design an indigenous system.
Those days, if you had a lathe and you had to make parts, the person who's turning the lathe had to be extremely good. And to get the same precision, he had to be good every minute, every second. And if we had to improve our precision in Indian engineering, Ravi said, well, let's put a computer there. And the big computer guys, the lathe is too small compared to the big guys. So he said, this is the ideal place to put our processors inside.
I remember basically traveling to Cochin along with Dr. Ravindran and staying in a house for a month or so. And during testing, naturally there were a lot of surprises, right? But then HMT staff was very cordial, very cooperative,
and we completed the testing. And then HMT took this particular system for the exhibition at the NFIT. We were very happily surprised to win the award.
And these improved the precision accuracy from, I think, millimeters to microns. That made a huge difference, and this was a different impact again at the factory floor.
So we normally used to call these projects as special projects. See, we had designed the systems for a special application and designed a system for regular data processing application. So these two were done in parallel.
ProcSys was the design company, right? And PSI Data was the manufacturing.
And the first computer was sold to Western India plywoods, because that was also a huge thing in a wooden crate.
Initially, what we had a bunch of CPU cards. So that was the IM16 microprocessor based CPU card, and I think we probably designed some memory cards and put it in. So that was our first prototype computer.
The funny thing is that if you look at today's products and the products that time, the basic electronics and the board is there, but the rest of things are all, I would say, assembled by carpenters, like Gopi. Everything is made, assembled, then go to a field, put it on the customer table, make it work.
And that was the first computer they shipped, and after that they have gone places.
We have done everything possible, you can think of.
PSI was famous for using creativity at all levels. Right?
So some of the systems we designed parallelly. One was called Action 16, another was called Data Well, and the third one was only.
This was to explain the era. This was the time when IBM and Coca-Cola left India, because there was a political change. Emergency happened, then the new governments came in. So there was a vacuum in India of computers. So all the business machines which were running, suddenly the guy who sold them has decided to leave. Then Ravi said, hey, let's make our business systems and we will sell. And he did. Most of the companies who were listed at those times had PSI computers. And at that time, because of the same, several companies pulled out, then some parts of India felt that it's very risky to depend on only a few suppliers for our defense needs. And they said, well, can you make a PDP-11 equivalent? And then, of course, the PDP-11 equivalent was done from this basement. It's a signature moment for Indian computer, and it had a huge hit in the market. Omni was one of those big things. And we also supplied to many other people, who wanted ruggedized mil-specs versions of these.
Also, what was very interesting a little later around that same time, so, 85 is when Microsoft introduced the concept of PC computing. PSI decided to get into it. For PSI, I personally think it must have been a kind of let down, right? Okay, you're building this high-end system, RISC-based computers, bit slice-based processors, and so on and so forth. That was the computing power that we are talking about. And from there to get down to doing, PCs, as you would call it.
Today, of course, everybody talks about IT services, which is, huge. And a lot of it is because the dollar is 80 rupees. But those days when we were doing, the dollar was perhaps somewhere between 6 to 8 rupees. So it was not a cost optimization. They would come to India only if they saw a real value and a talent. So that was the time when PSI ended. Second, you have to do it irrespective of what circumstances are, because communications being what they were, how do you keep things going?
Those days, I don't know whether you people know teleprinter or something, which I worked on that also. Like enter the message in a tape, because there is no corrections can be done, which was really challenging for me. Evening 5 o'clock, all the three of the director used to give me that work. Enter this. Even if a small mistake is there, no, this is not one. So retype the whole thing. I used to enjoy that.
We probably were the first people to get what is known as a custom bonded warehouse. So at some part, I think one safe or something like that in the company was declared to be a custom zone. So you can bring in components, keep them locked in the safe without paying customs duty. And then the finished goods you'll again send out by first calling in a customs inspector. That kind of thing, I don't know how difficult it was for them to get it, but we had it. The other part of the story would be to have the license in the first place to be able to bring it in. Irrespective of whether you pay duty or not, you had to have permission for that. So I think that was quite tricky also.
I must mention here the significant role which Mrs. Leela Damodaraman also played in obtaining various clearances. So we were going through very difficult license Raj at that point of time. Unfortunately, Mrs. Leela Damodaraman was an honorable member of the parliament, and many issues which required government clearances at various departments, Ministry of Company Law Affairs, Ministry of Technology, Ministry of Electronics, Ministry of Finance, wherever there has been difficulties and bottlenecks to get through the government processes, Mrs. Leela Damodaran's support was hugely helpful.
But the whole ideas were so new. It took a lot of effort to go there and convince people about the functionalities and how these things will be beneficial in the long run, etc. And I think until Narasimha Rao came up and did his liberalization in the early 1990s, that would have been the story.
Now we have everybody getting tense, excited, and nervous about schedules and deliveries. But Ravi worked in a different thing. He would say, well, I trust you know what you're saying and you will make it happen. He didn't have these staff meetings. He would talk to people individually. And he would say, okay, you have a problem, let's go down to the board. And then he would draw something and let's say, I think this is solved. Now you can work out the details. So people worked on these schedules, they owned them. And because they owned them and they felt the customer was theirs, and they also felt the company was theirs.
Remember, see, if they are very good, very people, there is a lot of, competition. Trying to earn this and really see, among them, but no, we didn't have that. You know, part then you have to some organic. We thought you have to walk that. That was such a wonderful feeling.
Dr. Ravindra and I, we did clash a little bit because he was such a dreamer and I was such a down-to-earth person. For me, his ideas finally needed to get translated into money. So, and that was not what he was really looking for. And so, but he was a great guy, Dr. Ravindra. I loved the way he used to hold his people together.
So he was a different kind of a guy, an engineering manager with a flair for the business development of a different sort.
Data systems, process controls, microprocessor, computer, mini computers are all germane to India. At that time, it was not there in existence at all. And it was processor systems India and PSI data systems which gave the head start for this. So therefore, I must say that he could perhaps be the father of the data processing revolution in India.
We had done one of our most exciting projects with the Japanese. And it was a project of unbelievable proportions, which I think not just launched PSI, but launched perhaps Indian talent onto a global map.
What I do remember that this was from a company called NED, and Matsuno-san was the head for that. They got it through meeting and they gave it to us.
There was an interpreter trying to translate what Ravi and the Japanese gentleman were talking to each other. And this Japanese gentleman was a very, very tech-savvy person because he built the first Tokyo Tower. And Ravi explained this problem and he said, this is what we should be building. It was the first time an Indian company delivered full systems, that is hardware and software. Even now, to believe that a company from India would deliver both hardware and software, a system as solutions, is quite difficult to embrace. Today, everyone understands protocols, communication, how to have a secure socket layer, everything. and everybody understands what is a LAN, what is a Ethernet, what is fiber. But these were days when there was nothing of that. But the Japanese and Ravi had conjured up a project saying that there are many areas in Japan which can't get teachers. So how about taking the best teachers from Tokyo and doing a courseware? So we broadcast the education courseware from Tokyo to those schools so that the single best teacher can teach many schools. And we first started with Hokkaido. Then Ravi said, okay, let's go to Tokyo. So X of us went. And
So before stepping onto that was Junko-san teaching us Japanese. Okay, so we had to be trained in Japanese. We had to go through Japanese classes every evening. Fun, it was good fun. If I remember right, we were the first people, or one of the first two in the world, to build a mini computer using microprocessors. So we're pretty much referencing a manual, okay, or a standard, and creating the first set of interfaces. And if I recollect right, Kalyan and team were one of the first people in the world to port BSD Unix onto a microprocessor-based system. So if you go back to that, the number of firsts that must be there, I don't know if anybody has recorded that in the annals of Indian IT industry, right? Because it is outstanding, right? The second was they wanted to do video-based education too, right? And I still remember how it was done and visualized. Is Ravi actually got some designs of TVs, and looking at that, actually they built a controller to capture video and to play back and control that. Unheard of. On the software side, everyone talks about Microsoft, right? So there was this team of Ram Dikshit and a couple of others who actually created this user interface for potentially the students. So the equivalent of Paint, if I remember, equivalent of Word, and a couple of other packages that were created. So the first of the user interface packages were created like that.
And the good thing about that was even the government of India considered that delivery from India to Japan as something big enough, where the Union Cabinet Minister came down to hand over this, symbolically hand over the hardware and the software to the Japanese. So it was a very proud moment for almost every Indian, and definitely for all PSI folks. When we worked on it, we didn't understand. We were just looking at it from purely technology perspective. What is the hardware? What is the software? What is the OS? What is the database? But that was not the picture which Ravi drew. The different thing about Ravi was that he would always be at the macro picture, at the big picture. And he would also look at it saying, how do we do it for them, and then also launch it as another 32-bit processor in India.
And then it was, I think, brought into India back as Sirius 32. Altaf and team took it up for production. So I think the first couple of years that I know of, it was all selling by engineers. And that is when maybe the leadership felt that they need a good marketing team. So this is what my interpretation is.
Then, the marketing team joined PSI, and then we started getting into the market, and people started to know what PSI is all about.
In the 80s, I joined PSI Data System. The basic idea there was that since we have got this know-how, we should be able to do sales in India, manufacturing in India.
What was really happening is that we had the processor system. These were the guys who were the brains, the technologists. But then there was the marketing team. But culturally, I think we managed to merge together because I think we needed each other. It was a very close-knit culture. We were like one huge family.
And as a company, PSI has a children company. PSI Data System is one of them. And children become bigger than parent company.
PSI Data was always considered as a separate company, And I think there were like close to 500 people and all that. PSI Data was the third largest computer company in India then. Those days it was Wipro, HCL and PSI.
Today we take a look at software from India on this edition of the Computer Chronicles. The burgeoning software industry here in India has led to a concentration of computer companies in the south of the country in the city of Bangalore. It's the fastest growing city in India. Across town, a well-established Indian computer firm called PSI continues quietly to build up its American customer base, which it started to develop in the early 1970s. PSI's big partner is Bull Computer of France, recently merged with Honeywell. But their software projects span the globe. PSI has developed software for Western Union, Harris, and Whirlpool in the United States. A Japanese company hired them to write a bilingual Japanese and English word processor, and in another project for Japan, they created a Unix lookalike called Unix.
I think the reasoning for bringing in Bull was twofold. I mean, there was a lot of hoo-ha in the market about the whole banking system becoming computerized. And one felt that the kind of power that was needed in the banking system was the mainframe power. Bull was very strong in mainframe. But the other thing was that also Bull was going to be the basis of using some of the people that we had in the company who could help them develop their products and their software product. So it was a combination. Now, that it didn't succeed is another story.
Things would have gone off very well, but unfortunately, Ravi's health started failing, if I remember, around the late 80s or so, and he had a serious heart issue. We did not realize that. Suddenly, one day he called some of us to his hospital when he was unwell and told us he has almost decided to sell off this unit because it will be difficult for this unit to go without him being actively involved. After considerable thought, we agreed to that, and then he authorized us to negotiate. Later on, unfortunately, he had to be taken to United States for his treatment in heart, and he never came back. He passed away, leaving us all in complete void.
Ravi was quite a visionary at that time. And so his going away was really, quite an impact. Quite an impact.
Ravi is a gem of person. Okay, I like him. I will miss him.
So myself, Ajit Balkrishnan and Harindran, 7 days we had full-length discussions with the technical team and the legal and financial team of Bulls SA France, and we finalized the takeover deal by which the Bulls SA France invested 51% of equity in PSI Data System, and it became a subsidiary of the company. And finally, even Bulls SA France were not able to, after several experiments, continue the company successfully. So they handed it over to Aditya Birla Group. Subsequently, they merged it as their unit.
And so we've been doing some kind of work more or less all the time on the R&D side. We were more of a services organization for quite some time.
We started doing a lot of work in communications, which was developing rapidly at that time. We got a very unique requirement from one of our customers in the US.
So they wanted us to do a pretty high-speed switch, and there was no real hardware available at that time. So we just picked up whatever was available and did some additional things to it in order to make it work at those speeds. I think that was a really nice project.
It won the Best Product Award among all categories of products in the Network Interop show in the US.
Yeah, but those are the kind of things that maybe, make you feel nice. Yeah.
Around 1998-99, we had set up a dedicated application software group.
We were always keeping up with all the latest technology at that time.
Having the higher-end clients, and so we also be with the latest technology always.
We have a lot of experience in
developing highly secure APIs and integrated development environments for the platform.
Today, like a lot of Fortune 10 companies are our customers through our partners.
ProcSys has never shied away from taking any technology. We have never held ourselves back from it. And that has been one of the key points.
So here, if you work for a few years, you'll definitely get to know how a product is actually like going into discussion and how it is finally delivered to the client. So that's something new here.
So in ProcSys, we have very good experienced engineers who can handle all the challenging projects. We take care of complete product development all the way to a fully certified product. Usually all this project involves developing board designs, FPGA designs, embedded software, application software, and enclosure design. All this activity gets done here, and it's a one-stop solution to the customer.
So I think we have a very good core understanding and getting the customer confidence. So I think that was a key challenging thing.
2000 onwards, we started doing pre and post silicon services for chip development companies. In communications, we had already developed products across major LAN and WAN technologies, token ring, Ethernet, FTDN, broadband, DSL, ATM, etc. for customers all over the world. We did a lot of challenging work in the defense area. We developed hardware for avionics, which was used in mission computers.
One of the projects was the passenger information system that goes on metros. So everything is controlled automatically by a computer. Human interface is not there. And another project was from Spain coming in. We had built a nurse call management system where you place a device and it automatically senses where the patient is going to be, and then emergency care can be provided.
We also did a very interesting product for a US customer, inexpensive ventilator, something which is easily usable even by a nurse, any technicians in an emergency situation, anywhere on the roadside or whatever.
We worked on the consumer-based applications, basically the handles, point of sale units. Following that, we worked for the medical and industrial electrical domains.
The interesting part was working in medical domain on mass spectrometry instrument. It was very challenging and it is abreast to the latest technology.
So in the last 10 to 15 years, we have been doing a lot of work in advanced scientific instrumentation, control system for industry like a power plant, defense, and in IoT areas. Of late, the last 3-4 years, we have been doing embedded product solutions, including incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning.
What is uniquely different about this company has been about, bring out these new products of this kind constantly. And it believed in the fact that talent is the capital.
ProcSys has been extremely fortunate in getting a lot of good engineers, So that's been, I think, our strength. Without too much focus on how much money you're making and, more of the thrill of the chase kind of thing.
And you had a very good culture in your point. Very empowerment culture. Work like anything. No time is our job has to be done, it has to be done.
I was very creative when I was working PSI, and I used to love working a lot. So I used to work almost 7 days a week. So when I got married, people said, Raja, how was it you married? I thought you married a PSI.
Office atmosphere is not like any other company kind of thing. No? People casually coming and talking, and you have been given the opportunity to meet anybody, talk to anybody.
Being a small place and small group, we had a person-to-person, very good friendship, good bonding, and also very informal environment. I mean, work is formal, but after the work, it was a very informal environment. Looking back, they are all very special. Any product which ProcSys have developed or brought out were really ahead of times. So was, I think, their thinking.
While Dr. Ravindran was very much a technology man, very, very strong in his ways in which he will go, Hari was on the other side a much more balanced, easier person to get along. And he made sure that all the people who came stayed. So he brought in a culture of empathy, of being able to understand people. He guided them, whereby the best of talent could come out from each of them. So that, I think, was his leadership style.
Hari he was never a CEO to us. He was more like a friend. We could just knock on his door anytime and we could just talk to him for hours. He was able to ignite something in us that makes us think about what should we do in the future. His smiling face would never fade. I'm very sure of it.
He used to be a dreamer, and you will not imagine what extent of level to which he can think and explore.
When we joined ProcSys, we were told not to call anyone, as sir or ma'am. So, yeah, but that doesn't mean that we don't have that respect. He's actually I am just getting goosebumps when I'm even saying this. So he's a fatherly figure. So even to him, we used to, warmly call him as Hari, but it was all with due respect. And we can see that we could, feel that fondness that Hari had towards each and every individual.
Even in difficult times, Hari was always there, not giving up. And for running day-to-day matters, Madhu was there. So those were two pillars.
Hari was always passionate about working on cutting-edge technologies and developing world-class products. He used to throw ideas and motivate and instill the sense of ownership with the team, and then let the team take it forward.
Hari was, he's a very, what do you call it? Like a parent. Madhu is a little more stricter, but they gave a lot of freedom.
I really call ProcSys a second home.
Folks who love this field so much, and they are very positive and very, very gung-ho about the future. And I don't think I have ever experienced that kind of a work-life emotion elsewhere.
For a person like me, who entire life, I would say, what I am today and what I am not, as I told you, is because of PSI. So it's very, very sentimental for me.
PSI really kind of made me what I am. Okay, I can't be this far in life. I did come long way in life without the PSI's foundation.
So PSI is where I started my career. I owe a lot to PSI in many different ways.
I am a man who could see the PSI's from the initial stage and growing stage. I could see. Yes, I was lucky.
Even now I feel that I don't know if I leave PSI, how my life is going to be. I just cannot imagine at this age also.
I've grown with them. So it's more a family for me than just a professional and client relationship.
It's really one of the stalwarts of the Bangalore tech ecosystem, and I think it's always been, for me, a matter of great joy and pride that I've been associated with them right from those early days.
Yes, perhaps a well-wisher of Hari would have told him, if you hadn't started this, and if you bought some land in Bangalore, periphery at that time, I think maybe they would have got maybe 1,000 time return or a 10,000 time return. I don't know. Something like that. But that 10,000 time return perhaps happened because these people started this company in this basement.
Today is a very emotional moment, especially when that banner came down and explored 50 years. I just looked, I don't know, it was quite moving. So many friends over here.
But to imagine that 50 years ago, somebody walked into this basement and started one of the first IT companies in India. I think that is quite amazing. What ProcSys does and what ProcSys has done and will do is making the impossible possible. the art of the possible. Thank you so much.
I still can't imagine it's been a 50th year. Hari and Ravi, and would have enjoyed to see this day to come.
Dear ones, the whole world came in front of me to celebrate my 50th anniversary. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Cheers!